South Carolina, the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial taking place in Walterboro. We saw Alex Murdaugh on the stand last week. He is we'll hopefully hear closing arguments in just a little bit. We want to start here on Live Now from Fox and talk with a legal expert, a legal mind. Doug Burns, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. First of all, we know the jury will be going out to Moselle to see the crime scene firsthand. What do we make of these latest developments, and maybe what was the side of the defense that they didn't want this to happen?
No, that's always very interesting. And, I've been in a number of cases where jurors will send out a note to the judge. Your Honor, we'd like to, in one case, we'd like to pick up the duffel bag, that was in the courtroom because the case involved a heavy amount of weight in the bag. Or as in this case, we'd like to go visit the scene. I mean, I'm all in favor of visiting scenes, on both sides of the courtroom, to get a feel for it. But it's very, very interesting, A, that they asked to do that, and then B, that the judge is allowing them to do it. So, we'll see what comes of it. I think this jury, has to be absolutely, scratching their heads, for lack of a better term, on, put aside, the drug addict, put aside he stole money, on the X's and O's of did he kill these two human beings? That's what you have to focus on. So the question becomes, show me the proof that this is the human being who killed these other two human beings. And you saw this morning, they called defense pathology witnesses to contradict the state, about the position of the weapon, the angle of the weapon, the distance of the weapon. The defense said it was right to the son's cranium and so forth. So the jury is just, again, scratching their head saying, well, wait a minute, we got to get our arms around exactly what happened at that exact window of time.
Yeah, and when they go out to this site in South Carolina, at Moselle, the residence there of Alex Murdaugh, at this crime scene, what takes place at this? Because obviously there won't be any cameras out there, but what takes place? Will the jury be able to ask questions? Will they just be able to walk around the site and kind of see potential crime scene? What happens when they're out there?
That's a great question. Basically, they're going to be, under sort of close supervision. The bailiffs or marshals of the court will take them out there. They're not going to really, in my view, even though I'm a New York lawyer, not South Carolina, just that qualifier. But the point is, I don't think there's going to be anybody for them to ask any questions of. And I just think that basically it's a visual inspection of exactly the area. The kennel, obviously, which is sort of a separate part of this estate. This estate is many, many hundreds of acres, as everybody heard. And the kennel area, and particularly in that, time window that they're thinking in their minds of, 10 to 9 to 9:02, whatever. Again, they saw a video of that particular dog and so forth. So I think they just want to go out there, and it's really, to answer your question, finally, just a visual inspection of the premises.
That is very, very interesting, because obviously the defense argued that it might have changed a little bit since the night of that crime, of those double homicide there. I did want to ask you, because we did hear from forensic experts earlier today saying that they believed, in their opinion, that there would have had to be possibly two people involved. Is the confusion side of that the goal for the defense, just the confusion that they think there might be someone else, that Alex Murdaugh maybe didn't act alone?
Absolutely, 100%. You're spot on. The point is, we have the old cliche. I'm not trying to be, cute or sarcastic. Throw what you'll throw up against the wall, see if anything's going to stick. So on the defense side of the courtroom, and I've had the luxury of being on both sides, 9 years as a prosecutor and over 20 years as a defense lawyer. The point is, of course, if you can just raise the notion, the idea, more than one person, of course, that starts getting tricky, because more than one could also include this defendant plus one other, as opposed to someone other than this defendant. But again, you're right. Anytime you can cause jurors, there have been a lot of cliches thrown around, and I'm not faulting anybody, such as it only takes one juror, to hang the jury. We get that. But the reality is, in most hung juries, if this is going to eventuate into one, I don't think it's going to be any kind of 11 to 1 type of thing, honestly. I think it'll be split much more down the middle, if that happens. Nobody, no trial lawyer can predict what a jury's going to do. But at the same time, it behooves me to note the forensic proof here isn't that overwhelming.
Correct.
Let's face it. But you have this fascinating situation where the guy just gets up there like it's nothing, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I stole millions of dollars from everybody. Really sorry. I was a drug addict." The drug addict actually could help him, by the way. You want to talk about X's and O's in court because A, it can create some sympathy, and B, it creates convenient cover for why he doesn't remember things. So the dynamics in this case are all over the place, honestly.
Yeah, all over the place would be a very good way to describe this case. Alex Murdaugh, the last several years in that low country in South Carolina. I did have to ask your opinion about it because some other legal experts said that Alex Murdaugh shouldn't have taken the stand, that it was against his interest to take the stand and he shouldn't have done it at all. What is your opinion, and maybe how did that credibility factor into it when he did take the stand? What's your opinion of him on the stand as a whole?
Well, I'll quote my late dad, who was a lawyer for over 50 years. And my late father would have said right now, in answer to your question, that, these type of decisions and situations are an art, not a science. The general rule is that it's very risky to put a defendant on the stand. I've seen situations where jurors basically reject what a defendant is saying, even if it's truthful, by the way. I've seen that. So, yeah, it's risky. It's also risky when the individual does have these drug problems and these theft problems and so on. But here, this defendant may be smarter than everybody because his gambit, for lack of a better term, his gambit was, look, I'm freely admitting against my own interest. And by the way, this case is pending against me and I'm going to get hammered that I stole from everybody. So when I tell you that I didn't kill anybody, you should believe me because look at me, I'm freely admitting this. But back to your original question, look, I don't fault any legal expert for saying that, maybe he shouldn't have gotten up there and so on. What puzzles me is that usually what happens is you get to the point where you're trying to decide whether the defendant should do it. And if you feel that the state has not proven the case, very strong argument for not getting up there. If you feel that maybe they have, you've got nothing to lose, you get up there. So with Alex Murdaugh being a veteran trial lawyer himself, I was telling my wife this last night, he must have sort of concluded, wow, I think I'm really in harm's way and I need to get up there, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Doug Burns, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox as the case goes on. Hopefully we'll hear closing arguments in the coming days and we'll send it to a jury. We appreciate all of your insight here on Live Now.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. As we continue on here on Live Now from Fox, here's a live look at the courtroom there in Walterboro, South Carolina. The Alex Murdaugh murder trial continuing on as the jury will potentially visit the crime scene. We just heard that there from Doug Burns here on Live Now from Fox. We want to continue to bring in all of the experts. We're going to bring in right now another legal expert here as they are talking about this. We're going to bring in Randy Zellin. Thank you so much. Also a legal mind here that we constantly talk to here on Live Now from Fox, and we always appreciate your insight. You listened to what Doug said. Are we surprised that they're going to go out to Moselle to see the crime scene? Kind of what do you take away from that latest development today?
I think the more that the jurors are doing things, looking at things, hearing things, it is creating an opportunity for the defense to raise reasonable doubt. And it's super important for everyone to understand what reasonable doubt is. Reasonable doubt is not simply a doubt based upon reason. Reasonable doubt is anytime you need to make a really important decision in your life, like, do I have open heart surgery? If you can schedule that surgery with your doctor, you don't have a reasonable doubt. If you need more information, if you need a second opinion, then you do. So I think taking the jurors out to the crime scene, it's not going to give them the forensic evidence that's missing. It's not going to give them the eyewitness that's missing. It's not going to give them the confession that's missing. It's not even going to give them the motive, which is super, super weak, that has been offered by the prosecution. So I think put that check mark in the column of the defense. What are they really going to see other than maybe well, maybe those experts that are talking about the shooter needed to be 5'2", and maybe there's more than one shooter, they'll start playing in their own minds being at the scene. Wow, let me try to reconstruct this, and I'll be the amateur crime scene reconstructionist.
That is a very good point, a great insight there about what we might see with the jury out there at Moselle. I did want to ask you, because we also talked with Doug Burns about the confusion it caused and the saying that the forensic expert today said that there possibly, in their opinion, their professional opinion, there must have been two shooters because they wouldn't have brought two guns if there was just a... How much of a confusion play is there for the defense there with that forensic expert today?
In a case like this, you want to make this case everything about a double homicide. The defense has done a pretty good job of that by shifting the focus from this being a homicide trial to a financial crime and fraud trial. He's not on trial for that. So now, if you can start raising questions, aside from sloppy police investigative work, aside from no confession, no eyewitness, lousy forensic evidence, including a T-shirt that was mysteriously destroyed, footprints that couldn't be identified or identified as a police officer's, a million people rummaging through what should have been a crime scene, rain, and Paul Murdaugh's lifeless body and his brains being left in the rain. So you have a compromised crime scene. You take all of those things, and now you've got experts talking about, well, the shooter was somewhere between 5'2" and 5'4". Now you have, based upon the fact that there was more than one weapon and the size of these weapons and the fact that the shooter, him or herself, could have been injured as a result of the blowback. So much here. Mm-hmm. These jurors are going to be left to say to themselves, do I have enough information to conclude that this man is someplace beyond a monster?
Yeah. There's a lot of information here beyond just the case that we're watching, and that may overcloud some of the facts that were being presented here during this case, just all of the different circumstances there. And I do want to ask you, because I've asked other people about this as well, but Alex Murdaugh taking the stand, he is a disgraced lawyer, but he's a lawyer nonetheless, experienced for decades and decades in that field. What was your opinion of him taking the stand, and maybe how did his credibility impact that when he was on the stand?
It was a brilliant move. Quite frankly, it was a move with absolutely no downside. Alex Murdaugh is playing with house money right now. He's facing 99 or 100 or 150 other charges. Odds are he's coming out of jail feet first, and he's already admitted to all of those crimes. So there isn't anything to even talk about. He had zero downside by getting on the stand, and to Doug's point, saying, listen, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other. I'm a horrible person. I'm a terrible person. I've hurt many, many people, but I would not do anything to Pawpaw, and I would not do anything to Mags. And that, to me, it wasn't a gamble. It was a riskless transaction. It was betting with money where you're getting paid whether you win or lose. It was heads I win, tails you lose. It would have been foolish. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying that now, knowing that last week I went on and said in no uncertain terms there was no way in God's green earth he was going to testify. I could not have been more wrong if I scripted that out. It was an absolutely brilliant maneuver, and it has left at least one juror saying, I am not convicting that man.
Yeah, it is interesting because obviously him taking the stand, and he looked like a lawyer on the witness stand. Sometimes lawyers make the worst witnesses. Maybe this wasn't the case.
He was brilliant. He was reasonable when he needed to be. He kept saying to the prosecutor, listen, I'm not here to argue with you. If you're telling me that's what you have, I'm not pushing back on it. He admitted when he lied. He admitted to the use of the police badge or the overuse of the police badge. He was emotional when it was time to be emotional, so much so that there was snot running down his nose, to quote Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull. I mean, it was an absolutely masterful performance. And I say performance tongue-in-cheek because it may very well be that a double murderer put on a masterful performance. Remember, you're right. He's a lawyer, a generational prosecutor. This guy knows how to prepare a case. He knows how to take a case apart, and he knows what's going to resonate with people.
Definitely. Thank you so much for the insight here, Randy Zellin. We always appreciate your time here on Live Now from Fox, as we will hopefully hear closing statements in the coming days, and it will hand it over to the jury there as well. We appreciate it.
Thank you.